This is a story about waiting until you get sick and then hoping a doc is going to, you're going to find a doc that will cure you. Sort of like most of us do today with heart attack, stroke, dementia, cancers. Compared to the alternative, which is changing things about your lifestyle which prevent the disease in the first place. Now, why am I showing this? Many of you may recognize this. These are shaker boxes. Shakers, who's that? You may know them as the folks that have the very simple but very functional set of style. There aren't any shakers around anymore because they had a vow of celibacy. So that caused some long-term problems in terms of growth of the community. Here's another picture, not so good, but it shows you the nesting component of the boxes. Now, one of the largest shaker villages was about 15 miles from my home here in Lexington, Kentucky. And this story is about cholera. Now, you may say, well, cholera is not happening in the U.S. Well, cholera cases do happen now. Admittedly, most of them do come from catching it overseas, but this is not totally, what I'm going to be talking about is history. But again, it's like the guy that said, those that ignore history are doomed to repeat it. There were 500 people that died here in Lexington in 1833. Nobody died, nobody caught cholera in the Shaker village. Why did that happen? Well, it's an interesting story, and again, we'll get into it. In 1833, and then again in 1849, there were two huge cholera epidemics in the U.S. Cholera was discovered, the cause of, or transmission of cholera was discovered in London, England. And in fact, I've got another video on that. It was a fellow that discovered that if he took the pump handle off of the Broad Street water pump, he stopped transmission of cholera in that area. Now again, this is all sounding a little bit ethereal, but let me hang in there if you would, and let's look at some other pictures. For those of you, at least the geeks like me, you may find some of this interesting. So in 1833, just a few months before this cholera epidemic, the Shakers built this house. Now, I've been to the Shaker Village. Again, it's close by. It's a great place to hike. So Janice and I go out there 5 to 10 times a year just to have, they've got a great lunch there as well. So a great restaurant. So we'll have a lunch and go hiking. I've seen this building many, many times. I had no clue what was inside it. An interesting thing, note this little sign up here at the top of the building. And we'll get back to that in a few minutes. That sign was actually used by men who were operating a horse-powered pump in a spring about half a mile away, 3/4 of a mile away. We'll end up with that picture. So this was actually the Waterhouse, again built in 1833. There was a Dr. John Shane there, and he said, look, bathing and hygiene is very important. In fact, I'll just mention this other point. Hygiene and disease prevention were not the only things that the Shakers were very forward about. This Shaker group, village here, Pleasant Hill, was founded by a female. It was run by a female, one of the largest groups they had, and blacks were welcome there. This again is in the early 1800s, pre-Civil War, and it didn't matter what color you were, what gender you were, so long as you were a human, you had the same amount of respect in this Shaker community. Now, he did recommend a lot more washing. For example, always wash your ears, neck, and feet as often as once a week. And the washing of the whole body is helpful as well. So, but maybe not as often as once a week, right? That was still a major step forward for those times. And if you look inside the house, this is what you see. That house had a giant water barrel inside it. Here's the way the house was built. It was the Waterhouse. This was the house that we saw from outside. But again, inside you have these pillars, and up at the top, it's a water tower disguised as a house. This little sign, again, is attached to a float. As the water level goes up, the sign goes up. Therefore, the person down at the bottom operating the horse-drawn water pump knows that, okay, it's full, it's time to stop. And here's those stone pillars. Here's Janice walking down to the spring house. That's the spring right there. So again, they had an iron pipes that took the water up the hill and up to the Waterhouse. They did also have privies. Privies were a little bit different from outhouses. As you see here, one of the major problems with cholera, the reason 500 people were wiped out in Lexington, is that so many people obtained their water from underground wells. Well, these wells were often contaminated by outhouses where the human excrement was just dumped below ground. It would then seep into the limestone. There's a lot of limestone here in Lexington. And instead of getting the filtration that you would expect, you would get some aquifers that just took the water straight from the bottom of the outhouse right into the water pump. And again, once you realize what this picture is showing, it gives you a good understanding of what happened with cholera. Are we going to find some similarities in terms of what we're doing with heart attack, stroke, dementia, cancer, that we're doing some really dumb things? Yeah, I think we will. Again, other similarities beyond the fact that right now we're just waiting and hoping that we don't get nailed as the next heart attack, stroke, cancer patient. Just like in the 1830s and 40s, people just waited and hoped that they didn't get nailed as the next cholera patient. For those of you who actually hung in there with me, thank you very much for your interest.